Welcome to Adjusted Reality, a podcast series trusted by the adjusted and brought to you by the Foundation for Chiropractic Progress, where we learn from athletes, celebrities, influencers, and healthcare professionals about how to optimize health in a fun, relatable way. Join me, Dr. Sherry McAllister, as I speak with Dr. Cindy Howard about her book, Positively Altered: Finding Happiness at the Bottom of a Chemo Bag. From a modern dancer to a title-winning powerlifter, Dr. Cindy Howard's life has been an exciting journey filled with endless adventures and a vibrant spirit. As a board-certified chiropractic internist, nutritionist, and national speaker, she dedicates herself to empowering others to live their best lives, both emotionally and physically. Driven by her passion for athletics, Cindy pursued a career in chiropractic following her graduation, and today she channels her enthusiasm into running her thriving practice, where she attends to a diverse array of patients that range from fatigue to autoimmune disease, catering to individuals from pediatrics to professional athletes. Ever the determined and resilient individual, Cindy encountered a life-changing moment when she personally diagnosed herself with Hodgkin's lymphoma by reading her own test results. Now, this experience solidified her unwavering belief that we possess the power to choose our approach to life and determine how we respond to the challenges presented by the universe. Embracing this philosophy, she authored her inspiring book, Positively Altered. This is a celebration of empowering your belief system. So welcome to Adjusted Reality, Dr. Howard.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited to be here today.
Well, this is a great book, and I'd like to kind of kick it off with, it's a book that you sit down with, and you're probably not going to be able to put it down. So put aside a couple of hours for you. This is your treat. This is your moment to actually hear another side of being sick, but being well. And it's all mixed together. And that's what I love about this book is it's eclectic. And as one of the reviewers said, and I do love it, I believe he's a Tony Robbins individual that noted you can laugh and you can cry, and you're almost doing it at the same time because it's inspiring, but it's also heart-rendering. So let's start with some of the very difficult conversations. Let's take you back, Dr. Cindy, to that moment. The lab papers are in your hand, and maybe even before you did those labs. What is it for our audience? Tell us why you did those labs. Let's start there. Why did you do those labs? And then what happened when they were in your hands?
Great question. So it started with a golf ball size lesion sticking out of my neck, which normally is pretty weird, right? And I assumed it was an elevated lymph node and I was going to wind up being sick at some point, and the sickness never came. So like any good physician, we have to work up what we find when it doesn't go away. And because I run a lot of labs in my office, I pulled labs on myself. And when those papers came back, it's very interesting when you're playing doctor and you're reading somebody else's lab work, and it's very easy to be objective and straightforward and diagnostic, and you make good decisions. And when you get lab work back that looks absolutely awful and scary, and you're reading it about yourself, it's very difficult to actually pull those things out. So it was a kind of an oh crap moment, if you will, because on one hand, I wasn't expecting that. And then on the other hand, you want results when you see that something is wrong. So it was, it presented a really interesting moment to decide how you're going to react to some potentially not so wonderful news.
And you, having spent time with you, it's such a pleasure because there's very little that rocks your boat. It's you have a very steady, even character about you, and you're extremely positive, even when things are not so good, even when things are just kind of maddening. You're there and you're looking for that silver lining. What are we going to learn from this? How are we going to react? And that's why I really wanted to bring you on Adjusted Reality. Is it's our response to what we get in life. And I want to start with, you stay so positive, yet for the average patient that's sitting on this adjusted reality podcast right now, they're thinking, I got that result. I might just like give up. I might just start selling my crap and going on a long vacation around the world. So let's start there. Is how do you stay positive when you just found out you have cancer and you're not sure exactly what you're going to be able to handle and what you can't handle?
Yeah, actually, the trip around the world sounds like it would have been a good choice. I would have enjoyed that very much had I gone that path. So that's not always a bad one. But I think the question is a really important one because it really comes down to how we react. And no matter what happens, there's no way to walk through life without some sort of adversity, right? And it doesn't have to be massive. It might be really tiny, but it's our reaction that we do get to control. So whenever something is thrown at me, there's kind of this deep breath that you take before you answer. You know how everybody says to think about what you say before you say it? I'm going to suggest that we think about how we react before we react. And the question really comes is, which rabbit hole do I want to run down? Do I want to run down the one of self-pity and sadness and, depression and frustration? Or do I want to look at this as an opportunity to find some gifts and figure out how to shift and take on adversity and learn and grow and, overcome something that can be pretty detrimental if we go down the wrong rabbit hole. And I think for me, it was an easy choice because I found, anytime I've played the victim or felt sorry for myself, the end result really, quite frankly, isn't that great. And when you learn it's not that great, sometimes that shift to a more positive attitude is what helps you with, every single time adversity throws itself in your face.
And throughout the book, there's a lot of laughs. And I have to say, Cindy, you're one of the most humorous chiropractors that I have met on the road. And that's such a blessing because I think humor plays a major factor in how you look at things. And then when you look at those things, it does change the way you want to react to those things. That in and of itself brings such pleasure to, yes, I have to go through a therapy. And now I get to respond to how that therapy looks. You've been practicing functional medicine and chiropractic care for almost 25 years. It's a big responsibility, and you became your doctor and the patient at the same time. With both of those settings being your own patient and also helping patients for 25 years, tell us a little bit what you learned as a patient. And tell me what you learned as a treating chiropractor.
Oh, I think the biggest thing that I learned is to question everything, right? It's about figuring out the why we do the things that we do and why it's important to us and why we want to accomplish something. And along that path of the why is then to question so that we can really get there. So when somebody just tells you what to do, it feels almost very parental, right? You're just being told to do something. And in that discovery of asking questions about the what and the understanding, I think it's much easier to choose the path. And in chiropractic and in practice, I really learned the same thing, right? Patients come in and they might have a what, I want to get out of pain. And when you understand the why they want to get out of pain, it's a little bit easier to help meet those needs and get them on the right path. But at the same time, I expect them to question everything I suggest. I want them to feel comfortable and understand and agree and buy in and all of those, big sales words, right, that we use. But really, at the end of the day, it's about building that relationship of that understanding so that you really can accomplish whatever it is. And I think that's been the gift, both directions, is to ask the questions both as a patient and a practitioner.
It's very important. I think I very much agree with you that a patient goes in, maybe they don't know what their results are. And it's Dr. Cindy Howard looking at the piece of paper and just going, okay, here's the results. Here is what's next. I would want every patient to be around an advocate as well. And Cindy, you've had some tremendous advocates that were with you throughout this journey and even writing the book. And I'd like you to touch on if you could help someone that is going through their own physical or even mental conditions right now that need some help, what would you say to them about picking an advocate?
Yeah, and you have to build a team, right? And sometimes it's not just one person, and sometimes it's one person for different things. But I think the key thing when you build that team or the one advocate is to make sure you're very clear in what you want and what you need, and not to expect anybody to understand that for you, right? We do that a lot in all sorts of relationships. We just want people to show up and know what to say and what to do. And really, that's unfair. And we set both of us up for failure that way. So it's about being very clear in what you expect. And when I built my team and had my advocates, I did just that. Here's what I want and what I need. They shared with me what they were capable of giving, and you reach an agreement if that works.
It was so beautiful because there was a lot of advocates in your life and in your book that shared different things. And I wondered how they knew. And that was one of the reasons why I had to ask that question is they showed up prepared. And many of us are unprepared for someone, our loved one, to have cancer. And it takes us back and reflects on our own life and what we can give and how we can be supportive. But you're right. And I really want this question, this point to be outlined is that crystal clear integrity is met with expectations. And when you talk to the patient or you talk to your loved one that has cancer is what can I do to ensure I can be of the greatest support? Is it making meals? Is it sitting by your chemotherapy bed? Is it helping out with the children? I can do certain things, but of course we have to have the realization that they're trying to live a life as well. And so many of your advocates in the book were just so, I want to say, beautiful. They were just beautiful. They showed up and they attended to what you needed. When you were a patient and knowing that you had to go through cancer, and this is a very difficult moment in your life, how did you keep the positive back when it was sick and you were vomiting and you were creating an environment that was so difficult, but you continued to be resilient in this area?
Yeah, and I think, and forgive the correction, but I actually never vomited. I did some great
Atta girl.
I did some great additional care to keep me well. Uh, For me, it was really about changing the language, right? So I wasn't sick, and everybody's listening probably going, "Ugh, but you diagnosed cancer. How could you not be sick?" I wasn't sick. I had moments that I didn't feel well, and I had moments of challenges, but my attitude is that I was and am well. And it's the power of the words. And you take a word like cancer, it has such a negative connotation, and it really upsets me because the minute you hear that word, people start to freak out, right? Like, oh, it's going to be bad and we don't know what to do and she might not make it. Instead of, you know what, here's an amazing obstacle, which is going to be an unbelievable challenge. And when you change the energy of the word, you alter the terrain of the word, you alter the terrain of your own energy into one of like, love the challenge, going to learn something, going to challenge it, right? And figure out how to overcome the power of the negativity. What's the opposite of that? You become positive, and those are the two choices. And at the same time, I'll be very transparent. There were absolute moments where I would crawl into the shower and lay on the floor of the shower and cry and go, "Why me?" Right? I mean, I think it's still human to have those moments of despair. And what really allowed me to turn those around was to also honor that, right? So it's not oh, she's always so happy and cheery and everything's so rosy and perfect all the time. That's never true, right? We have these moments of evil. We have these moments of, I couldn't think of a good word for that, really just down moments. And I think honoring those in a way where I gave them only enough power to last for a short period of time and then say, that's it, your time's up, right? Appointment is over with despair. And we're going to spend the rest of the 23 hours and 40 minutes today giving the words the positive energy that they really deserve.
Oh, that is very good because it transcends past looking at your health, but looking at life is you can have and probably should have reflection moments of I really blew that. I really did. And you can be so mad at yourself because there's things that happen in your life that you could have done better. You could have showed up better. You maybe there's 1,000 things I should have been prepared and the objectives didn't get met. And here's a full fat failure on my part. However, what I liked about it is that was chapter 1 and you flipped to chapter 2. That was your moment. You gave me an appointment to have frustration. Now I get to have the next appointment. And that next appointment is going to be celebrating who I really am, how great I am, and the opportunities that I did present to the world. So you said it so beautifully. I want our listeners to really reflect on how many chapters are you giving grief, sadness, despair, anger, frustration, and just pure evil.
Right.
So
it was a little dramatic, wasn't it?
That's right. I love it.
Possible.
So coming back into reflection when you wrote the book, and this must have been a very difficult, and I mean it in a word of hard to wrap your head around it to write a book of this nature. But what surprised you as people started reading the book? What were some of the reviews that you heard after the book was done? And I personally loved it. I thought it's a must read if you want to see how you can go from 0 to hero in 10.2 seconds, read this book.
Yeah, it's interesting. I got tons of different types of feedback. And, one, of course, was for the people that didn't know is we didn't even know you went through that, sort of like surprised, because truthfully, you probably wouldn't have known if I didn't tell you. That's how well I handled it. And it wasn't to hide it from people. It was just, again, I didn't want to walk around with people thinking, wow, Dr. Cindy's sick and poor Dr. Cindy. So, I think that's one surprise. I think, some of the others are just, so some of the stories, right? How sort of transparent I am and no filter I am and very vulnerable, really, that I chose to be in the book and share some very personal thoughts and personal experiences, not only just for me, but, including my kids and, other people that I love in my life, and being willing to put that out there, because again, I think so many of us go through trying times and we want to hide them. And for me anyway, sharing them is what got me through. It was the ability to share so that I could laugh, so I could learn. And it almost diminished the significance to make it better, if that makes sense, because I was willing to be vulnerable. And I love the idea of encouraging people to try that. It's scary, but it really, really can be very rewarding.
How did your children handle it? Because it is part of the rock and the foundation that brought you through all of this, is reading the beautiful stories and how lovely your children are and how they've grown to flower and be who they are. And I can't help but think that this touched them in a very deep way and in a very positive way because of who you are. Tell me about how you saw it through your children's eyes.
I was very fortunate because my children were kind of at that weird age where they weren't so little that they had no idea what was going on, but they really weren't old enough, I don't think, to understand the full capacity of the diagnosis. But at the same time, I never brought the scary home. It was just, okay, mom's going to treatment. Mom's got a weird cap on her head so she doesn't lose her hair. Mom can't make dinner tonight. So you guys, don't burn down the house, please. Like make sure you turn off the stove. And it was that sort of almost cavalier attitude, but matter of fact, this is what's going to happen for the next, whatever months. And I need a little help. So I engaged them and included them in that way. And they just stepped up. It was really amazing, whether it was helping me change the caps or, checking on me if I needed anything when I was sleeping. Well, I guess that's not good to wake me up while I'm sleeping, but, maybe rolling around in bed before the Z's kicked in. And they really did. They just miraculously shined through the whole thing. But I think because I didn't bring the sickness home, it gave them that ability to not be as scared as most kids probably would be.
And I can reflect on that in how we talk to the people that we care about and really discuss some of the difficult moments. Is you can exemplify fear and you can also exemplify anger. But when you're talking through your own lens of being a patient and trying to get it to the children and share with them what this means, they're not thinking outcomes. They're just thinking about, this is mom. and mom needs to do these special things and create an environment that allows her to increase her healing. And I think they'll probably reflect back and think to themselves too, as life throws them some difficult moments, how mom healed that. Because often in many families, the mother sets the tone for the emotional integrity or the emotional intelligence, and you're clearly at the top of your game on the emotional intelligence. But difficult moments happen. What's the one thing people often forget about life's difficult moments, in your thoughts?
Well, they're going to show up. I mean, there's no way to avoid them, right? And I think that what I'd encourage everybody to remember is that difficult moments doesn't necessarily mean that they're bad. It's an opportunity, right? It's an opportunity to find the gifts. It's an opportunity to look to see if you want to shift your life in any way that maybe wasn't working to its max benefit like it was before. I think that the reason we are thrown some of these things is for an opportunity to grow. And if we don't embrace those, they're probably going to keep showing up. And when we learn from them, not that adversity will ever stop, but I do believe it comes then in a different way that allows us, again, maybe that next step of growth.
So I'm going to take you to a difficult place.
Okay.
Imagine that you got the diagnosis and you weren't a chiropractor. How would that have changed things in your mind?
I probably would have been a little bit more scared. And I think the reason I give you that answer is because as a chiropractic physician, I know a lot of people, I have a lot of tools, I have some great resources, and I've got 25 years of education that I've helped other people walk through this, right? So I came with a skill set that was already sort of embedded in this journey. Without it, I still want to believe I would have been as resilient and as persistent in finding those answers. I think it just would have been a little bit more challenging, right? And that's where the team is so important, and the advocate that you mentioned is so important, because when we have that, even if we don't come with the education that I showed up with, we can find it.
It touches me because I've spent the last 28 years being in the holistic side of life and not really having a lot of time thinking about sickness. As I think more about wellness every day and well-being and how people can put their best foot forward, and that chiropractic has this lifestyle approach. And I believe very strongly that that lifestyle approach is all encompassing. And I want you to walk back to your journey as an athlete and how well, because this is probably those moments where we get authentic of, you did everything right. Talk to me about that.
But we don't, right? And hindsight is exactly what they say it is. And when you look back and you make these choices that you think are the best ones in the moment that you had, and you're okay with them and should be, it's really easy to go backward and say, wow, maybe that tab that I drank for breakfast wasn't such a great choice, right? And, maybe I stayed up too late too many times and wasn't able to rest. And maybe I skipped that adjustment that week because I felt so good and I didn't need it, right? In my own mindset. And when you look back, I still didn't make any mistakes because I made the best choices I made and I learned from them, right? So that retrospective, did I do everything right in the moment? Overall, probably not, and still probably don't, right? There's choices every day I'm still making, even having walked through this challenge. The dairy-free ice cream is a choice every once in a while, even though it's dairy-free and it's still filled with sugar. And, you just got to give in and grab that spoon and dig it out of the pint once in a while. So I think everything does, can you do everything right? No. What you can do is that you can embrace your choices. And one of the exercises I do at the end of the day is I lay down, and before I fall asleep, and I got to do it quickly because I'm a really good sleeper, is I think back about my day. And if I'm really happy with all my decisions, I lay down, I close my eyes, and I'm excited for the next day to do it again. And if there were some decisions I didn't make, like I ate the whole pint and should have stopped at a couple spoons, right? I think, what the great thing is tomorrow I get to wake up and do it again, and maybe there's no spoon in my future for a while. And it's that ability to start over every single moment or every single day or every single year, whatever you choose it to be, and shift in a way to avoid the storms that you learned are coming.
Well said. It is, because everybody that's listening today, we have the choice. As soon as we finish this podcast, we can reflect on where we're at, what we're doing, why we've chosen to do that. And I really enjoy hearing you talk at the very beginning about the why. Why are we here? Why do we want to get better? Why is our life worth living? And sometimes it can be that dark, especially with mental health. Being so compromised in the last couple of years after we've lived through a pandemic. And I think compassion and love gets us through a lot of this. And one thing about Dr. Cindy that this audience needs to know, she is full of love. She really is. I think that's the reason why you wrote this book. A lot of time goes by after writing a book, and you start to think about things that you could have, should have, would have done. There's other things that were barriers. And sometimes we think of barriers and the hurdles that we have to get through to get to the next spot. But then there's this thing where you gave an example of a false barrier. Share with the audience, what is the false barrier? And then how did you break through that false barrier?
I think the false barrier, it can mean different things for different people. And depending on the day you ask me, I'm probably going to answer this question differently. But a lot of that has to do with just really being honest about who we are, right? And recognizing that. But at the same time, giving us the credit that we're due. So the barrier can be that I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not pretty enough, I'm incapable, this, right? All those I'm nots instead of the I ams. And I love there's a list I make quite regularly about I ams. And you can even see in the story, I mentioned I am sexy and I am funny and I am intelligent and I am well. And you might look and go, she's really not that funny. But that's all perspective. I believe I'm funny. So therefore I am. Actually, my kids always tell me I'm so not funny that I'm funny, which doesn't that make me funny? But, it's just a belief system. And that false barrier is what we tend to believe in a negative way that gets erected that really is our block. And if we can pull that barrier down and start making positive I am messages to move through our challenges in our life, the barrier gets removed.
And you talk about lists, and I can see Dr. Cindy Howard makes her lists. I am is a great list. There's others that you have brought up in your book that I'd like you to explain why. And when you make these lists, what purpose do they serve?
Yeah, so the list organizes me a little bit, right? Think of a to-do list, although my to-do lists have to-do lists because I never get to cross off all the things on the to-do list. But it's a way to organize, whether it's activities or thoughts on paper. And for me, it gives a little bit more value as well because I can see it in writing, right? It exists. It's right there in front of me. It's a way to organize. It's a way to prioritize, because sometimes when something's on a list, you might look at it and go, this one just doesn't have much value to me, but the one at the bottom needs to be moved to the top. And it's just a way to make decisions, I think, right? Whether it's, you got a list to go to the grocery store, it's what foods to buy, or, maybe it's who to call or, what illness you want to run over that particular day. And for me, it's just a very valuable way to focus and organize thoughts and hopefully follow through on them.
Well, that kind of brings me to something that I think is very important for us. And I don't want to make it seem trite, but those phone calls that you just mentioned, they're extraordinary. And yet we put them oftentimes at the bottom of our list. And for me, just being able to say, I have to stop the to-do list for a moment to figure out that I have a priority in this to-do list. And one of them is calling a friend. And I'm grateful now as I can add Dr. Cindy Howard to my, hey, I'm just going to stop for a second. I need to make a phone call. And this is not a game. It's not a Trivial Pursuit or something like that. Hey, I need to call a friend. This is how we technically create happiness in our life, is we learn to adopt a positive and mental attitude, but you also learn to be empathetic to someone that you love or care about. And oftentimes we don't know until we make that phone call. And sometimes we just need to hear someone else's voice. If you're working from home and you're not getting out every single day to see everyone that you used to see because COVID's changed your life. I know there's a lot based on the statistics in the U.S. Health and World Report about how many people are now working fundamentally just from home. And what that means, that I think having those moments where we do our to-do list, but maybe we prioritize just our mental health for a moment. And I'd like to ask you, Dr. Howard, when you think about your happiness and how you were able to be jovial and move the barriers, and some of them being false, and move some of the negativity out of your way, what are some of the things you prioritize just for your mental health?
Breathing. That was number one. As silly and as simple as that sounds, we breathe to stay alive, but we just don't breathe with intention. And it's that slowing down, finding some quiet, and really learning how to breathe and bring oxygen to the tissues that it resets our adrenal glands that help us manage our stress. It resets our thought process. Sitting in the quiet, that's the first place I start. And, I sort of have a joke that you lock yourself in the walk-in closet for 5 minutes every morning and just breathe and see if that alters your day. And I think that was the first place to start. Exercise played an important role. Food was essential. What I put in my mouth was perfect. A little less nowadays, but still pretty darn good. In order to feed a really great environment so that it can grow and build and fight the way it's supposed to fight. And then, really it is about those relationships. It was showing appreciation for the people that are really important in my life and telling them that, not just thinking that, really reaching out and saying, I value you and I'm appreciative for you and I love you. Um, the reward that you get, I think, back from that by saying those words to somebody are tenfold. And yet you can really alter somebody's life because they hear it. We're very quick to judge. We're very quick to criticize. We're very quick to, be in a rush. But when you really take the time to share and appreciate the people that are important, on any level, and it little importance, lots of importance. I think there's different variations in that with the people in our life. It comes back, and that warmth feeling that, comes up with inside of you from breathing and eating and sharing and relationships, beats the drive in the fancy car to the sunset, although that's fun too. But, it beats those things, any day.
As those that are listening, if you're a physician or you're a patient, I think there's a lot of clarity here that I want to bring out, and that is, consider for a moment how gifted a doctor is if they open their ears and they shut their mouth and they listen, because that's a really important aspect of it. And for a patient to consider that moment where you get to share how you feel with that physician, because physician-patient relationship is a critical component to healing. And also truly being present. And that's one thing I want to share with those that are listening is, you speak to Dr. Cindy in a convention. And when I first met her, I stood eye to eye with her, and she was all in with me. There's 1,000 people around us and we got a lot of commotion going on, but Dr. Cindy's with me. And that feeling of importance, that someone is with you, you're eye to eye, and you forget the phone. And I have to often say, I love my staff. They're fabulous. I just want to be with that person and nothing else matters. I want all of our audience today to consider, are you with that person you love? Literally, like your phone, forget your emails, because the time is so precious. And I'm looking Dr. Cindy straight in the eye because she knows exactly what I'm talking about. We're literally in a vortex of 1,000 people, yet the only person that exists is the person right next to me. And that's Dr. Cindy. And sharing those moments, I think, on a healing perspective, critical. And if your doctor does not make you feel like you're the most important thing in the room when you're telling them what is going on with you, how your symptoms are coming through, and that you need help, that's a different subject. And that's a vote with your feet and get the heck out of there. And for the doctor who's listening, take that moment, because yes, we know you're pressed for time. And the best opportunity to really understand a patient is to listen to that patient. And that's why Dr. Cindy's book becomes such an important endeavor. Is she listened to her own self, she listened to the people around her, but she also shared with many advisors how important her life, her symptoms, and the objective of why she wanted to heal so quickly to get back on the road to help others move their life forward. So I want to ask you, you do a lot for other people, and it's incredibly important in my world of altruism. What for you makes life so much more zestier, aside from just writing the book and being a doctor to patients? But tell me, from after writing this book, what makes you zig when others are zagging?
It starts in the office when a patient sits down with me for a consultation. And after about 45 minutes to an hour, they walk out and they say to my team, I feel better already. And it's that gift of that exchange of energy and conversation, and as you're, that connection, right, of being present, that makes such a huge difference. And I transfer that to the stage when I stand in front of an audience, whether it's 25 people or 25,000 people, it doesn't make a difference. It's that ability to connect, to share a piece of information that can alter their terrain in such a way that either they're affected or they can then affect somebody else that needs that piece of information. And as weird as it sounds, that's what jazzes me. It really does. And whether it's my kids, my friends, people I've never had a conversation with, but I'm still speaking to in an audience, when something changes and you've made that difference in a positive way, everything was worth it.
It's incredibly dynamic that our life fluctuates from the good to the bad, and it can happen in an hour. You can go from good to bad in an hour, and it can be in a lifetime from good to bad. And there are a lot of people that have these false senses of reality because they look at TikTok and they look at Facebook and everybody's having the perfect life. It's a perfect life. Look how lovely it is. It's rare that people actually put out, "Hey, I'm bleeding out today. Can you help me out?" I mean, it's just that
Right,
simple.
right.
Because as a healer, as you are, it is hard to say, today is a very difficult day, and I'm going to need someone to bring me some dairy-free ice cream, bring 2 spoons, and sit on my bench with me. Tell me about what you say to the people that are seeking this quote unquote perfect life.
Yeah, you got to keep going, right? My mother used to have this saying. She would just say, keep on keeping on. And this was a woman who battled disease up until her very last moment and would tell you she was cured and was never sick either. And it is that mantra of that word again. And I know I keep coming back to this, but what really is perfect? My life actually is perfect. If you divide it out and you look at some of the events, you're going to go, how can you say that? And the reason I say that is because I learned something, and it's part of the journey. And every single moment, good or bad, got me to exactly here. And I feel really good in this moment. I'm happy in this moment. So our lives are perfect. And if you're looking for whatever that perfection is, then maybe we have to redefine what that word stands for. And I love some of my favorite words are journey and shift and terrain. And when we really build a good terrain and we learn how to shift when crap gets thrown at us and we embrace the journey, maybe that's a new definition of perfection.
I'd like to say, for those of you that are listening, is take the shift. This is the book. It's called Positively Altered: Finding Happiness at the Bottom of a Chemo Bag. And before we end today, I want to give you one last ability to reply. Why read the book today, Cindy? Why read Finding Happiness at the Bottom of a Chemo Bag?
Because you might need a laugh, or you might need encouragement, or you might need to pass it on to a friend, or you just really need some extra, paper to burn in the fire pit. There's always a gift, right? No matter what it is, you're going to be able to use the book in one way or another when you find it.
I love it. You can get it on most platforms. I know, Cindy, that you're out there, you're speaking, you're lecturing, and you're also treating as a treating physician and chiropractor. I want to thank you sincerely for all that you do for the profession. I also want to thank you for being so authentic and real and sharing your life's journey, because I know it can be a very vulnerable place to be. And I hope that the people out there that do read your book understand that it took a lot of courage. And I believe courage is contagious. So you're going to be inspiring a whole new generation of people that are trying to hide their head in the sand. And it's time for them to take their head out, shake it a little bit, and bring it forth. And I'm going to let you close it out today with some final thoughts on adjusted reality.
Yeah, thank you all for just listening, right? And I would encourage everyone to check out the book if you're willing and able, which means you are. Oh, did you guys hear that? My dog Walter agrees with everything I just said. I love when he confirms what's coming out of my mouth. So check it out at drcindyspeaks.com. If you want to check out the book, there is a little book tab. And really, at the end of the day, the greatest gift I can give you is just, wake up tomorrow and become positively altered. Thank you so much for all the time today, for the audience, Dr. Sherry. It's always a pleasure. You're just so wonderful to spend time with. And I look forward to seeing you again soon.
I want to thank you for tuning in to Adjusted Reality as we spoke to author of Positively Altered, Dr. Cindy Howard. When you change the way you look at things, the things you actually look at change. It's why you reflect on how you're feeling, contemplate the options available, and then make important decisions on who would you want to surround yourself with if you wanted your life to be extremely positive. Are those people in your life right now? Do they exist? There's another question you need to do before you need them is, who do you want to be your advocate for your health? If you did get sick, who would you want right beside you? The time is now to have that person embraced and share with them, listen, if something happens, and maybe it's already happening, would you be my advocate? I want to tell you what my desires, what my goals are for my health. And if I'm unable to express how I'm feeling, I would need you to be someone I could lean on, because the more people know what is expected of them, the better they can be for you. And that's why I love Dr. Cindy's book. It really points out some of the obvious. This podcast was brought to you by the Foundation for Chiropractic Progress and is a special gift for listening today. Visit f4cp.org/health to get a copy of our Mind, Body, Spirit ebook, which focuses on many ways to optimize your health and the ones you love without the use of drugs or surgery. Don't forget to subscribe, share this podcast with friends and family, rate and review. I want to hear from you. I'm hoping you're enjoying this podcast. And if you have guests that you would like to see, well, just let me know. If you're feeling inspired to learn more about chiropractic or to find a doctor of chiropractic near you, you can visit f4cp.org/find a doctor. We appreciate your support and look forward to checking in with you again soon.